All right, hello everybody. I want to talk about a memorization trick that has been so helpful, not just for memorizing things, but also for learning them faster, for learning them more solidly, and for working your transposition. So, as you know, my philosophy in life is pet two cats with one hand, or, pet five cats with one hand. So, I like practice strategies that give a lot of benefits across the plate and challenge you to stay in flow. And I promise you, if you practice this strategy, you will memorize so fast and you will be so caught up in the process that you won't be able to put your horn down. And if you do need to put your horn down, you can continue the process laying down on the floor or singing or walking. This is going to get this music stuck in your head. So I'm going to demo it with Kopprasch. Although, a quick note, I have not been practicing this Kopprasch. What I've been practicing has been a really weird funk etude by Bob Mincer. So I really love this guy. And I don't know if you can see it too clearly, but it's called Syncopated Accents. And I'm just memorizing it from the back. This was taught to me by Jeff Pirtle, who was a student of Claude Gordon and who documented Claude Gordon's legacy. And this practice technique comes from Claude, very influential pedagogue in the trumpet world. And basically, you start from the end and work towards the beginning, and you do it in chunks. So when I look at this Kopprasch, the first thing that I see is the last two measures, like this. All right, that's a chunk for me. All right, so I can memorize that's a G major arpeggio. If I wasn't familiar with what an arpeggio was, I might need to learn it bit by bit until it clicked. For example, in this funk etude, I got something like this. Something like that. Those aren't arpeggios, the notes are weird. I had to do it very slowly and small chunk by small chunk. So if you're just learning this arpeggio, you would start, again, from the end with maybe, and then when you had that, you would practice it a few times until you can do it away from the horn. And what you want to do also is practice your ability to transpose so you understand the way these patterns lie, the relative pitch. That's going to give you a more resilient way to practice. So let's do it in E flat or D flat. Now I'm pretty clear what I'm playing, right? And you can hear that solidity in me. So let's take the next chunk backwards. That's going to be 2 bars in this case. For me, this Kopprasch slots into 2 bars pretty well. So I see a big G major arpeggio. Ooh, that's not practiced. So I'll go a little bit slower. And I don't need to play the whole thing. That last 2 bars is already learned. So I can play sort of variable speed on measures as I need to learn them. So I'm going to give it another go. All right, cool. That's coming together. And I can take a minute. Remember, I'm going to follow my advice and do it in another key, maybe A flat. All right, that revealed a weakness. I was relying on the feeling of the notes and the note names rather than the actual sounds of the notes. And you can hear that because if my relative pitch was 100%, hearing that arpeggio super clearly, it would have translated to the A flat arpeggio. And we want to have that resilience, not just facial muscle memory, because our faces change every day. And also because we want to be able to conceive the notes. We want to be able to use a different fingering or play it on a different horn or play it in a different octave and have all of that learning transfer. So let's try it again. That felt better. Yeah, there's something a little unclear in the. You could hear it that time I played it super cleanly, super clear. Now it's in there. So once it's in there, you're going to follow Philip Farkas's advice, which is don't play until you get it right. Play until you can't get it wrong. So I'm going to try it again. All right, that's pretty good. I'm going to ignore dynamics and stuff like right now. I'm going to kind of do an interpretation layer after I get the notes really memorized and solid. But you can kind of work in that direction. Aha, and that revealed a weakness. Right there. So I'm still creating errors. So I'm not going to move on. And you see how this is really creating stability on this last part. Now, can you imagine how many times I'm going to play that? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep adding measures from the end, which means that the end gets played the most, which means that as I play down the piece, it feels more and more familiar, more and more easy, more and more practice. So you start the piece and it's like going downhill skiing. Rather, most people will practice the first measures and then everything gets harder and harder and harder as they progress through the piece, which doesn't feel psychologically good. So I'm going to do it one more time just to be sure that I've got it. That feels pretty good for me. And then I'm going to check this next measure. So it's a next two measures back. I see this as a whole diminished arpeggio, so I don't need to chunk it. But again, if you are unfamiliar with these notes, you might just start or okay. That's pretty clear. So that I don't actually need one bar at a time. I can do 2 bars. So I'm going to think about it. Now this might seem painstaking, maybe you're used to going a little faster through the material, but I promise you, if you learn an etude like this, you're gonna remember for the rest of your life. So it's worth investing a little bit of time up front. It's also really quite rewarding to get in a flow of a lot of successes in a row, a lot of successes, and more success, and more success, and more success. Now I'm going to test this. So I see that the diminished arpeggio starts on an E flat in the key of G. So if I'm playing in the key of C, it would be a minor third down. So it'd be an A flat. So if I wanted to transpose this to, for example, the key of C, it'd be something like this. And you can see that basically the learning's stuck. That means that I'm doing good with my learning. Now I see back in the key of G, that's a measure that I need to remember because it's not quite just an arpeggio. So. And then the rest, which I know. So. In the key of G, it's a diminished dominant arpeggio. So maybe I'll just play it. If I was in the key of F sharp, it would be. And then. Something like that. So I'm building slowly. It might take me an hour to go through the entire etude like this. It might take me more than an hour. I've been going 10 minutes at this point and I've covered, maybe 8 bars or so. But that hour, it's going to be done for the rest of my life. So it's really worth this kind of detailed effort. Transpose. The transposition really locks things in. So let's take this again. And I see the bar before as. So it's the 4 chord. So if I was playing it down in E flat major, okay, so I've never played that before in F major, and it worked for me because I've learned the patterns right here, right live. I promise I have not practiced this etude in probably 20 years. Um, so I hope this technique is useful for you. If you've got a particular trouble passage or something you want to memorize, I highly recommend that you do this. Put in the transposition as much as possible. When it starts to feel, when you start to get bored, when it starts to feel stale, transpose, 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 test yourself, and then come back to it. The results will astound you. Happy practicing.